Testing, testing. Mic 1, mic 2, mic 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, enough of that nonsense. I have been working over the last 15 minutes, hopefully fix some microphone stuff. And so this is going to come through way clearer. One day I will probably need to upgrade some equipment, but we work with what we have. So today's, first off, my name is Sean Little. This is the Yellow Coat Club podcast. And once again, I'm excited for you joining me here today. As you've heard, or if you're tuning in for the first time, the idea of this podcast was birthed from, an idea that I was, gave and was put on my heart around the time of COVID, which was, creating this network of people, this club of sorts, the Yellow Coat Club, of people that were willing to share in their pain, that they were willing to be vulnerable with one another and then work, be side by side, and not only admitting the things that we were going through, really talking through these hard truths, but then also walking alongside one another without judgment and being able to say, hey, we're going to work through this together. I think so often we isolate ourselves. We find ourselves, in these places where, literally the subtitle of the book says, be courageous, stop hiding and start becoming. And that hiding is, separation from people. It is, isolating ourselves. And also it's just becoming a version of ourselves that we let the world see what we let them see. And yet in that way, we are caged off from truth. We are caged off from that human connection that so many of us desire. And so I'm just grateful for you to be joining here. For those of you that continue to listen, I'm just so grateful, and hopefully it's been fruitful for you. I've gotten some feedback on the podcast, and it's been really awesome just to hear from people and even ask them like, hey, how can, what things, do you want to hear more of? And so anyways, without further ado, I once again am excited about today's topic because, I get excited about the things that we speak about because, it's all this, what has happened in my life and how can I, share that and walk alongside other people and, have other people walk alongside me. And so I was talking with my friend the other day. My best friend and I were talking, and so many times we find in our life that people, it's like, whether it's in the new year, and we talked about it in the new year, which was goal setting and setting targets and moving forward. But in addition to that, there is this code, this standard in which so many of us either choose or do not choose to live our life by. And so him and I were talking about the things that people let themselves, move into, the things that people, the grace that people give themselves, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and therefore have no standard in which to live their life. No daily practices, no, things that have become so innate to them that, it is a habit. You don't have to be disciplined for it anymore because it's literally just the thing that you do. In the brotherhood that I'm a part of, one of the things that they would call it is it's a non-negotiable. It is literally something that you will not negotiate that you do this thing or not. And whether it's raining outside or the sun shines out or whether you wake up and you're tired or you're energized, like these are the things that we go do to set the standard in our life and then carry that forward and model that behavior for other people. And so, I was talking to my wife the other day. I've shared on here before, I coach some young men and, have been walking alongside them, which has been, absolutely incredible. It's been a really great, amazing experience. And honestly, it's one of those things that I just feel at home when I'm doing it. I felt so lost, when I was young. I struggled a lot when I was young. And so to be able to walk alongside somebody else and just even, share, experience strength and hope with them and be able to navigate those spaces with them as they, walk through some of the things that, similar to what I did. It's been really rewarding, and it's something that I feel very called to do. But with all things, people will come and go, people will ebb and flow. I think that, so many people start, a diet or a workout or, a lifestyle change with good intentions. But, when life comes at you, when things get rocky, when things get hard, when things get difficult, or we start telling our stories that the things that are working in our life no longer bring value to us, it is very easy to walk away. It is very easy to drift and allow those stories to justify why we walk away. And so it's interesting. I was talking to my wife and, I was, just, talking about my frustration with people not committing and doing the things that they said that they were going to do. I said to her, I'm like, I am tired of people half-assing things in their life and me walking around and going, good thing I don't operate under this thing that because you half-assed it, I'm going to half-ass it too. There's it's in Parks and Recreation, but the character Ron Swanson literally talks to Leslie Knope at one point, if you know what I'm talking about, and he says, "Hey, why why half-ass two things when you can whole-ass one?" And I love that because for me it just comes back to I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. None of us have this all figured out. And yet when we, are dogging it in different areas of our life, like it seeps into the other areas of our life. If I, give myself a little bit of rope here, then I'm going to give myself rope there. And before you know it, you've drifted in all these areas of your life. And so my wife looked at me and she said, you're a bit of a unicorn. And I was like, oh, all right. Yeah, that sounds amazing. And yet, because she said, not everyone has the commitment that you do. She goes, I know that you have this standard and you do these things. And, it's interesting because it almost became this thing where it's like this double-edged sword. You're consistent, you're dependable, you have this standard. And also there is no room for grace. There's no sleeping in. There's no days off. It's always on, which can be exhausting. And so it's trying to find that balance and I haven't found it yet. And so it's really nice to hear that from my wife. And at the same time, I'm like, I have things to work on as well. But, I think the reason that it gets me so much is because there was a time in my life where I did not have that standard. My standard was, getting drunk. My standard was making sure that, I could go and, party with people or take drugs or do something like that. Like that was the standard. And so it's really interesting when you start working through that, what I used to be is the thing that I have a really hard time tolerating and having grace for. I had no anchor, I had no frame, I was drifting. Imagine, think about people that you've worked for that are in leadership positions that have no anchor. Always, head in the sky and wishy-washy and, it's like, well, make a decision. I'm sitting here, all of us are sitting here waiting on you to make a decision and you're not willing to do that. Like, what is that? And so, for me, it's, hey, like, let's commit to the thing that we're going to do and then let's go do it. And maybe it's because I spent so much time looking back and thinking I wasted time or what. And, this is my, payback for, all of the years that I felt like I spent and squandered. And so, the problem becomes, like I said, there's this double-edged sword is that really the tension becomes when we negotiate the things that actually matter. Everything we place a value on. Some things, people place a lot of value on that other people are like, that doesn't mean anything to me, but it's what are the things that we're going to value and carry with us forward, and what are the things that we're going to leave behind? Or at least it's not going to take up as much room. Time is a finite thing when it comes to humanity. So it's not like we can just do everything all at once. Like we have to pick and choose. These are the things that I'm going to do because it is helping me move forward and reach the goals and live into the calling that I feel like God has placed on my life and has placed on all of our lives. And so those things that you do don't just carry this weight of like, oh yeah, I just got to do it. It's like, No, it's leading you towards something, greater. It serves a purpose in our life. And so if we can tap into that purpose, if we can tap into, where it is that we're going, and we're certain in that direction, it can help us to, make decisions every single day. So interesting when we talk about the standard, though. There's big things in our lives. There's the work and the ebbs and flows of that. But there's literally, when I talk about even a standard, it's like a daily practice that we do in order to take care of ourselves and gear up to enter into the world. Like, I want you to close your eyes for a second and imagine you wake up each day and there's this like almost bubble or cocoon around you, and you are like in the pocket. That is your space. And so inside of that, we must care for ourselves. So many people could sit there and talk about that being selfish, but it's not. You have to take care of yourself, or if you can't take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of the people around you? It doesn't mean that we give ourselves the excuse of just being, blatantly selfish and not taking care of our responsibilities. But it is taking care of ourselves, because that is a responsibility. We owe that to our families. We owe that to our wives, our spouses, our children, the people that we lead at work. We owe it. But we owe it to ourselves. And so before everything gets busy and the hustle and bustle of the day and everything, it's like, imagine you're in this cocoon, in this bubble. And when you start engaging in the world, it pops. And so for me, I heard, from one of the, people I'm in community with in that brotherhood, we talked about this protocol of eyes first. The first thing that your eyes should touch is being in the Word. Now, if you don't, adhere to, and you're not a Christian, like, I understand that could be a little different. You could go to, nonfiction that is feeding you or something. But for me, like, my basis of truth and everything that I do in my life is the Bible. And so eyes first go into the Word. I spend that time in the Word. I journal. I have takeaways. I write a note to my wife, and then I go to the gym. I do these things every single morning so that by the time, 6:30, 7 o'clock rolls around and I'm dressed for the day, like, I am weaponized to enter into the day and go tackle whatever comes at me. Doesn't mean that I don't have problems. Doesn't mean that things don't get the best of me, anything like that. But I have cared for myself. Honestly, more than many people have, and they're just waking up. There's power in that. There's power in that standard. And even if everybody else isn't doing it, there's power in the standard of saying, I'm going to do this because I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for me. I'm going to do this because I know that when I do these things, I am ready to go take on whatever life brings my way. And so, I was looking up quotes and trying to pull some in, but it's easy to drift. But if we have these protocols that we do every single day, these standards that we have every single day, it's almost like a recentering, a realignment. And so Aristotle tells us that, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. And I remember hearing, I can't remember exactly who said it, but it's like, discipline is one thing. Like, oh, I need to be disciplined to do that. But when you've been disciplined enough, like, it's no longer being disciplined to do it. You just do it. It is a habit. It is a part of you. And so, this drift, this standard, that's something that we have to set. Now, on the other side of that is the moment that we start setting these standards for our lives, where we're taking care of ourselves and we're, entering into the world and living this life that God has, called us to. The things that become the things that derail us are our excuses. They are the stories that we tell ourselves. I have an episode of the podcast that literally is called The Stories That We Tell Ourselves. So you can go check that out. But, here think about this. You wake up in the morning and, you have every intention to like get out of bed, go do your morning routine, your practice, getting into the gym. And it's just simply, I'm too tired. That I get that. Being tired is a very real thing. And I have also asked people, how late did you stay up last night? I stayed up till 10 o'clock. What were you doing last night at 10 o'clock? Well, I was scrolling. What would it look like to go to bed at 8 or 9? Oh, that's too early. Okay, well, if you go to bed earlier, you can wake up earlier and go crush it. So that's for you to choose. But at the end of the day, it's a matter of what are you going to give and take in your life? What standard are you going to live? One I love is, I'll start on blank day. And when blank day comes, nothing ever happens. I'm so busy right now. That one is very interesting to me because I guarantee you, if you were to actually go do a time study of your life, you could go find time. It just means that, no, this actually isn't important to me in my life. That's being honest right there. This thing that you're talking about right now, it's just not important. I remember talking to people that, they're like, oh, God is the most important thing in my life. Like, oh, how much time do you spend with him? Well, I check the Bible app in the morning. Okay. So 5 minutes? Yeah. Like I read the thing and I say a prayer. So you mean to tell me in all of your day, you're hustling, you're driving around, you're at work, you're at everything else, the most important thing to you is God, and yet you gave him 5 minutes? I think we need to redefine what important means to us. Doesn't mean that you're not taking care of the responsibilities that you have in your life, but just be honest about it. It's not the most important thing in your life. If it was, it's the first thing you would do, and you would spend a lot more time in it. Think about your important friendships. Think about the people that you care the most, that you want to pour into. Or think about our work. We spend so much time obsessing over so many things. It's like, wow, did you think more about that than you did this? Just be honest about it, myself included. And then some of the fun is we start talking about the things that we deserve, or bartering with ourselves. Oh man, when this thing happens, then I'll start doing blank. In a church setting, it's like, once I make X amount of dollars, then I'll be generous. Like, I'm pretty sure, hey, you've heard those verses, but if you're not generous now, then you're probably not going to be generous when you have more. If you don't use your time wisely now, with a new job or something else, it doesn't mean that magically, poof, you're going to be really good at these things. And so it's like, we need to be able to set these standards. Remember, no matter what is coming our way, it is the things that we do, it's the non-negotiables that we do in our life. And it has a ripple effect. And so some of the things that are at stake is that we just end up being this anchorless person that people are following after. And yet, it just makes it really hard for people to depend on the things that you're doing if there is no standard in your life. And I even asked the questions like, how could you trust yourself if you don't have those standards? It doesn't mean that you're going to like everything that you do, but when you don't hold these standards, it has an impact on your body. It has an impact on how you show up at work. It has an impact on your marriage. It has an impact on your relationship with God or, a higher power that you might have. It matters. And today I'm not here to convince you, but to get you to think about and discover, where you are in relationship to the standard. And what's hard is that so many people will sit there and go, well, what about grace? We give ourselves, it's almost like this little bit of rope, this little out, and it's almost like we give ourselves enough rope to hang ourselves with. And it's interesting, it's like if you think about like dieting, like there's dieting, and I'm actually one of the people that are prescriptive to it, which is like you get a cheat meal or you get a cheat day. The problem with cheat meal and cheat day is so many people turn cheat meal and cheat day into cheat week, cheat month, like cheat. There's no discipline there. There's no way to get yourself back there. And so if you can't be trusted with that, we give ourselves too much rope. I just fell off again. Because you didn't have the proper plan in place for you to be able to go do that and then come back. And so I think that we happen to live in a world where we might extend ourselves too much grace, or too much grace in the areas where it matters or where a standard exists, but not enough grace, in other areas that are so important, like when we mess up and being able to give ourselves grace there. It's like, give yourself grace when you mess up, give yourself grace when you make a mistake. Don't continue to keep doing them. Set a standard for yourself and course correct. But far too many of us make excuses for ourselves. And I think that we err on that side versus the other where, we're all sticking to and holding this standard. And so it becomes, it's weird. It's this, it almost becomes like an abuse of the grace of this ability for ourselves to be like, I can or I cannot do this. And from a biblical perspective, I even remember it's in Romans 6 where it talks about, where it says, what shall we say then? Shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase? I mean, if you really think about that, and he goes on further, he just says, by no means, we are those who have died to sin. How can we live it any longer? And so there's this tension, there's this push and pull of grace versus not grace. But, so many of us find ourselves in this weird tension. And yet quite often there is no standard. We have graced ourselves into negotiating far too much with our lives. And at some point we need to just realize that it's like, no one's going to do it for us. It's not anybody's job to do it for us. We have to either hold ourselves accountable, get ourselves within a group where we are accountable to one another and hold the standard, or we're aimless by ourselves. And that's what, everything that we talk about here, it's this stepping out of hiding, being courageous, and start becoming. And part of that is getting in touch with other people where you hold one another accountable to the standard. If you don't have a standard that you're going to live by, you don't have a code, people talk the code that we live by. I mean, have a code. Have something that you live by versus just, waking up in the day and going, where the wind wills wander. What does that mean for you that day? So, as we move forward and progress, it's like we need to realize that there's a cost. There's a cost to all of this. And I don't think that we all actually count those costs. We think that we do. We think that we're doing, everything that we can. And I've heard it so many different times. I'm just too busy. I've got, this thing going on. Or, people wake up and it's like, I got to lose the weight. And they have these really tough time with the conditions in which their life is. You've ballooned up and you are 40, 60 pounds overweight. And you're saying, I got to lose the weight. I got to lose the weight. And then you end up in, the drive-through line at Krispy Kreme. It's like, well, which one is it? You want to lose the weight or do you want to eat the donut? Not talking shade on donuts here right now, but it's like, which are the things that you're going to choose that are going to add up to your life? People are struggling, inside of their marriage, but never, decide to go do something different, to set a different standard within the home. And so we look around at ourselves and it's like, why am I getting the same results? It's because you haven't tried anything new. I've talked to some of the young men that I coach, and I know that a lot of people, and it was a fad at its time, and maybe it still is, I'm not exactly sure, but 75 hard was this really, really big thing. Well, the problem with something like 75 hard or Whole 30 is always that lingering question of, well, what are you going to do on day 76? What are you going to do on day 31? I know so many people, or at least enough people, that have talked about, doing Whole30, and then, afterwards, they end up going back and eating the exact same things that they were doing. It's like, what was the purpose of that? I've even said it, people are like, oh, I'm not going to drink alcohol in January. It's like, why would you need to stop drinking alcohol? I need to clean out my system. I've been drinking a lot. Do you have a problem? Should you stop drinking altogether? No. Like, okay. Once again, it's not for me to decide for you, but are these questions that we must ask ourselves. What are we doing to engage our mind, our body, our soul on a daily basis so that we can move into the world as creators of the future? Living by a code, living by a standard. Not held down or, caught in our excuses. And that is, where we arrive at, setting that standard. This lingering question of, what if you laid down all of your excuses? Ask yourself even today as you go through and you've, these questions, like, what would happen if you stopped negotiating? What would happen if you wrote down, these are the things that I do? And when the excuse comes up or anything, you literally talk back and say, this is what I do every day. What would happen if you stopped negotiating? What would happen if you stopped giving yourself extra rope to hang yourself with? Setting a standard and refusing to bend. What would your life look like? I was just at a retreat, a gathering with the brotherhood that I'm a part of, and we were doing an analysis and assessment of our last quarter, and then gearing up for the quarter ahead. And I kept looking at what I was doing. I was like, oh yeah, I'm very consistent. One of these lingering things that I've been feeling lately is that while consistency is great, at some level you need to start doing a few more things. You don't need to, kill yourself, but a few more things to increase your capacity, because there was this glaring question that said, if you continue to do what you did for the last 90 days, would you be where you want to be in 3 years? Would you achieve what you want to in 3 years? Would you grow? And I remember thinking, well, incremental growth sounds fine. And then I looked at it and I said, I would not grow at the rate in which I want to. I want to grow much faster than what I think that would do for me. Because eventually the tension that I have in my life would just become easy. And I would plateau. And I am not here to live a life where I end up regretting not taking the chances, not striking those arrows. And it starts by having a standard and putting yourself in the right positioning so that when the opportunity comes, when the time comes, you're not stuck with your head in the clouds. You're ready to strike. There's a joke in my house. I talk with my wife, and I don't always do this. I wish we were better for it. We were better at it. But, when we first met, I told her, I'd bring like random stuff in my bag, or I'd have random stuff in my car. And, it was like, well, why do you have this? And I was like, always be prepared. Who knows when you're going to need a sleeping bag? Who knows when you're going to need a tent? Who knows when you're going to need this item? But realistically, it's like setting a standard in your life gives you the preparation and the skills that when something comes your way, you have the training and are equipped to strike no hesitation. Far too many people are simply just unprepared. hesitating, missed opportunity. And we need to be in a place, especially with everything going on in our world right now, where we have people that are in a position to take the shot. Otherwise, we're bowing down and bending the knee to a future that we're not engaged in or even a part of. And in order to be in that position to take the shot, we need to be equipped. We have to be prepared. And that's a product of the standard. What would happen if you stopped negotiating? What would happen? General Patton says that a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week. I love that. It's not a matter about having all of the conditions right. It's not a matter of, oh, well, when this thing happens, I'll be able to do this. And, oh, I just wish I could. Just go do it. A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week. What are you waiting for? The things that we do today matter. How you prepare yourself, how you train your body, how you train your mind, how you show up and strategically operate within your business, not doing pointless work where your head's off in the clouds, but doing the things that matter. I've heard the saying where it's like, stop stepping over nickels to pick up pennies. Stop stepping over boulders to pick up pebbles. What are the big things that you can do, or the small things that are actually really big things? Every single morning, my pillow calls to me, and I could go right back to sleep. Or I could go prepare. I could get ready for battle. Go take care of myself so that I can take care of my family and the things that they depend on me, and that I can go live what God is calling me to live. We each have that opportunity. But we have to go take it. So what would happen? What would happen to your body if you honored it as a temple every single day? Diet, exercise, nutrition, rest, all of these things together. What would happen if you honored your body like that every single day? What if you showed up in your business full of intensity, no half measures, no half-assing anything, but that you were equipped to move into that day because you are drawing certainty from this morning standard that you have set for yourself? Imagine you're in a room with people, usually the people that are the most powerful people in the room, not always, but you've met those people that are absolutely certain. They don't need to speak the loudest. They don't need to do any of those things. And you can tell that there is a quiet strength and wisdom about them. Chances are they probably have some standard they hold themselves to. This one hits home for me. This next one. What if you pursued your spouse like you were still dating? I was talking to my wife last night, and we were talking about the things that we missed when we first met. And it was the being so enamored with one another, the pursuit of the date. And I said, what do I got to do to set that standard again? To bring, play and romance and just fun back into our marriage. It's so easy to, once you let that slide, it's like anything else. You stop going to the gym and before you know it, you're not going at all. Give yourself too many cheat days and you're not taking care of yourself at all. You ease up off the standard, you can have a standard in your marriage. The pursuit of the person that you love. Lest you create a new standard where your kids become the most important thing and you don't know your spouse at all. I have to be reminded often is that my son will one day be out of our house. And Charlotte and I will still be there together. And your relationship with God, for those of you that are followers, I can't stress this enough. What if you met God every single morning in the quiet without fail? Not like oh, hey, I just read my Bible app. Thanks, God. See you later. But intimate time with Him. And those are the things that you focused on in your life. Phil Knight, the creator of Nike. Just read the book right behind me on my shoulder. Shoe Dog. One of the best books I've ever read, ever. It's so good. You should go read it. But he says, play by the rules, but be ferocious. I think about that standard. I saw this, like, set it. Create yourself that, and then attack it. Ruthlessly committed to it every single day. And so if you're, sitting here and you're, trying to figure out what does these next step look like, the reality is if you're going to choose to do this alone, it might not work. It might not. And so I would strongly encourage you, just as we talk about accountability and stepping into, this future with other people that we will, do life with, is that, share your pain, share your struggle, but also find a group of, men or women or whomever and set a standard with them. Say, hey, what would it look like for us to start doing these things and, sending a message every single morning and, saying, hey, did you do your morning routine and checking in back and forth and encouraging one another, but also saying, hey, we said we were going to do this, and holding one another accountable. In Scripture, it tells us as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. It's not about somebody being wiser than the other. It's about doing life together. At the end of the day, what are you afraid of? Imagine right now, imagine what your life would look like with this standard, this power that you could draw from every single day. I literally crave my morning. First one in the house, up, cup of coffee, being in the Word, silence. It's like somewhat intoxicating. It is the place where I get to get grounded. I get to get centered before I go into the crazy of the day. I go to bed at night and I wake up and I recenter once again. I think about that scripture where it talks about, give us this day our daily bread. You think about, or even the Exodus story, when the manna came in the morning, you had to gather the manna every single morning. And by the time the sun came up, it would go away. And so you had to wake up and collect it every morning. And what would it look like for you to wake up and through that standard, get your daily bread? Get that manna. So I encourage you, this is the invitation. It's that continued invitation to step into the becoming. Setting a standard in our lives that might seem small now, but could change anything. I have on my phone, and it'll actually be, whatever, it's super kosher, whatnot, but it's this quote from C.S. Lewis that somebody had shared with me that I think I heard it on a podcast, but it was so impactful to my life. I'm hoping that I can scroll and find it. And if not, I'm just going to say it and absolutely butcher it, and it's going to be fine. So it said, you know, funny it is that, we do these things, day in and day out. And it seems like nothing changes. But when you look back, everything is different. It's this concept of, we wake up and we hold the standard every single day, and it's, that's the standard. That's the standard in which I choose to live my life. And yet, over time, you start to come to this place where you realize, like, dude, there's something else to this. And as I read that book, Shoe Dog, there was this really awesome, it was like one of Nike's first, ads that they put out. And, it says right here, it says, in big, and I won't read the whole thing to you, but at the end, it's where it gets you is, so the big headline is, there is no finish line. And at the end, it says, beating the competition is relatively easy, but beating yourself is a never-ending commitment. Being committed to doing these things and setting the standard every single day of our life, and watching the people be able to watch you and depend on you and walk alongside you and say, yeah, they said it, and I know that they're going to go do it. So I thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that as you reflect on this message and walk into the future, that you realize, like, there are things that you can do in your life today and set the standard. It doesn't have to be this big, giant, crazy thing. But what would it look like for you to take care of your body and your health and your relationship with God and your mind, and investing in those things day after day after day? What person would you be? What person could you become? Go step into that future and live the life that God created for you. Set the standard and don't negotiate with it. Refuse to let yourself off the hook. Hold yourself to it and hit and strike again and again and again. And watch what happens in your life. I promise you it will look much different than it does today. Thank you again for joining me. I'm so grateful for each of you. If you ever have any topics that you'd like to see covered on the podcast, you can reach out to me on the website, or, a really easy way is just to find me on, Facebook, or, send me a message through that. If you have my number, you can always just text me. But I appreciate you for joining me, and I hope that this was helpful for you. And I'm, looking forward to hearing from you. If, when I see you and we meet, is hearing about the standards that you've set and you've stopped negotiating with in your life. Thank you, and we'll talk soon. Bye.